those of our friends who are in Nashville and Tri-Cities and you haven't seen this show, you know, when there's a big Tennessee win, I pull out the orange jacket, I come walking in, and the first thing Swain says is, "It wasn't Florida."
Well, he's right.
It was a top 20 opponent on the road. You went there, you won on the road. I think it's a big enough deal to pull out the Ray Mears orange jacket.
Well, I mean, if Tennessee wins in 2 weeks against Florida,
I'll wear it again.
They win 2 weeks later against LSU.
I'll wear it again.
Bye. I mean, you just be looking like a creamsicle all fall.
Okay, Jason, in all seriousness, I'm going to ignore him for just a minute. How big a win is it to go beat a top 20 team on the road? You woke up on a Sunday morning, you wake up 2-0. Hadn't done that in a while.
It's been a while. It's been a while for sure. And, you know, this team battled adversity during the game.
Yeah.
They were able to overcome. And this is growth that we're seeing before our eyes. You see guys on the defensive side growing up. You see guys on the offensive side growing up and making plays when it mattered most. It was really, really cool to see. There was some times where I was frustrated. I was frustrated watching particularly the offense in the third quarter, but the defense stepped up. Special teams struggled in the game, but defense really, really stood up and pressured the quarterback probably more than what we expected. It was a great performance, certainly, by the defense.
I thought Tennessee won with their C-minus game, and Tennessee's not been able to say that in a long, long time. I mean, you look, the first quarter defensively was a struggle, but after that, it was really good play, and they were put in some awful positions in the second half. I mean, Tennessee had the whole third quarter where I won't say give them the knockout punch, but they had opportunity after opportunity offensively to extend and really pull away where they couldn't go, where they couldn't catch Tennessee. And the defense, block punt, short field, stand up, they do a good job. Fumble, stand up, do a good job. I mean, it's just over and over again. The defense was kind of left with, with their backs against the wall, and they kept, bending but not breaking. I mean, you have to be impressed with the way Tim Banks called the game. He really brought the heat in the second half. They, even before the quarterback swap when they knocked Slovis out, I mean, they were knocking Slovis around a lot in that first half. I mean, he was taking some massive shots. So, I think Tennessee, when they play aggressive and they, even if they're not getting a lot of sacks, when they're affecting the quarterback and he's getting hit and hit and hit, I think it only helps the middle part of the defense and the back end. 15
hurries, that's a big number.
Yeah.
And everyone looks at the sacks. You play video games and that's the only thing that matters. But hurries matter because you're speeding up that clock in the quarterback's head. Several times, Jerome Banks did a great job of jumping up and tipping balls and getting his hands in the passing lane.
Same thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. So they just harassed Slovis all day long, and kudos to him. He was tough.
I think there's a number of cities that woke up this morning not feeling real good about themselves. Nebraska got rid of their coach.
They happy, though.
College Station.
Yeah, they're happy.
They're happy.
Well, no, you know what I'm saying, though. You lose to Georgia Southern.
Yeah,
College Station wants to get rid of their coach. Madison, Wisconsin wakes up disappointed. South Bend, Indiana wakes up disappointed. Texas loses, but probably feels better about itself. Tennessee beat an 11-win Power 5 conference champion from a year ago, and there aren't many teams that did that.
No, I mean, it's not the same Pitt team from a year ago. They don't have, Jordan Addison or Kenny Pickett, but at the same time, a really good, solid football team. And again, the teams you're talking about lost at home. Tennessee went on the road and got a nice, solid win.
And they lost as 20-point favorites.
Correct. And now they have a 2-week build to Florida, where this group, Jason, and we'll talk about this for 2 weeks, has to be able to get over the hurdle of mentally only beating Florida one time since 2004, when they've been the better team several times in that stretch.
You know what this is kind of like? This is kind of like that basketball player that can't make a free throw, and he's in a slump, and then the announcer keeps talking about that he can't make a free throw, so then he really can't make a free throw. When you talk about that they hadn't beaten Florida since 2004, Florida lost to Kentucky. We already know who Florida is now. We don't have to wait till week 7 or 8. And you know what I mean by that.
Yeah, but Florida did this last year, right? They played Alabama very, very well, had opportunities to win. Alabama played for a national championship, and then they looked like a totally different team against Kentucky on the road, and Kentucky won. So we'll see the better Florida team. Just go ahead and get ready. You won't see that team that played against Kentucky.
If there's anything that Tennessee has to work on between now and then, what are you working on Saturday against Akron?
You're going to be more consistent on offense.
Clean it up?
I think they've just maybe his game plan. I asked Hype this after the game if there was something that caused them to go right a lot. I mean, because they basically Brew lines up left, Cedric lines up right, and then they kind of rotate with Jalen. But most of Jalen's targets were to the right. All of Cedric's 18 targets were to the right. And, Brew got very few to the left.
Okay, Jason, did you ever get targeted 18 times?
In one game? No.
In half a season?
Oh, my goodness, man. I mean, that's trust. That's trust. That's chemistry. That's the time that those guys have spent together. Hyatt had a lot of targets as well, too.
But most of them coming there in that second half on the right-hand side.
Yeah.
Tennessee's got to run the ball better.
Yeah.
Running. If you take away Hendon's running yards yesterday, the running backs really struggled. Although until he fumbled, Jalen Wright was having a solid game. But then, you fumble and you're never to be seen from again.
Okay, so I'm going to go old school on you. I'm going to go old school and say what they need to work on is getting the football to the tight end. You know what I've always talked about the tight end when we're doing a high school football game on TV. You got to make the linebackers play honest. When Warren and Fant each have one catch each, to me that's something you got to fix before you get to the heart of conference play.
Tight end, receiver, the ball needs to get more in the middle of the football field. I mean, I don't know if it's something that you don't want to play into maybe Hendon's weakness. I don't know if it's a weakness of his, but the ball doesn't get in the middle of the football field enough.
Right.
And we saw with Warren when it did, he almost scored.
Right.
There was a slant route that
He did score. Tennessee went up tempo. If Tennessee runs a normal tempo, they see the review. They review that. It's a touchdown. He rode the body of the defender into the end zone, unlike Cedric, who was down. Warren did score, but they went so fast tempo that Jabari Small poached the touchdown.
My point is, get the ball to the middle of the football field. You tried to throw a slant to high, it was a little off, but I think good things can happen when you try to get the ball.
He'd still be running if he'd hit that too.
Hyatt, oh yeah, absolutely. So Hyatt, tight ends, get the ball in the middle of the field.
All right. Well, one guy that was in the middle of the field and making tackles all night long is going to join us next on the locker room. We're talking about.
Can we get him to hit you?
What?
Can we get him to hit you?
Oh, that'd be great.
He tried to when I was bringing him into the TV station, but he's too nice. We'll visit with Aaron Beasley coming up next on the locker room. Well, so many times on the Food City player perspective in Josh Heupel's offense, we're talking about a wide receiver or quarterback, but not many times does a guy have 14 tackles.
No, not many. I mean, outside of when you're playing like a wing tee or triple option type team where you're going to rack up a bunch of tackles. But Aaron Beasley did just that on Saturday afternoon, Jason, and was a big reason why Tennessee's defense stepped up after that first quarter and kind of led this team to the victory.
Yeah, defense stood up in a huge way, and here with Aaron Beasley. Aaron, looked like you had your best game of your career. I know you don't pay attention to all the stats, but 14 tackles, a ton of hurries. It seemed like the game was slowing down to you. Why do you think the game feels like it's slowing down to you now?
I have to say experience. Last year was really my first year playing linebacker. So I definitely have to say experience. Of course, my brothers, we're working every day trying to become one as a unit. And what I'm saying, that's played a lot into, everybody's play as a whole. So.
A lot of great linebackers have played here at Tennessee, and they have a background playing running back in high school. You were a guy that played both, running back, linebacker. How do you think that experience playing running back helps you as a linebacker?
Definitely, because, I kind of know what running backs look for. Of course, they want to look for the open hole, but also I understand, how the run plays that they run, I know how they, supposedly want to unfold. So, that kind of gives me the ability to, know where the play's going to hit and, be there to make the play.
A lot of heat on Slovis this past weekend, and you can tell the hits were getting to him. He was standing in the pocket being tough, but as a defender, you can kind of see the opponent's eyes and kind of tell, like, all right, we're getting to him. At what point of the game did you start to see and notice that from the opposing quarterback that you guys were getting to him and really affecting him?
Honestly, you couldn't really tell. Slovis, he stood in there strong. He kept making throws when he needed to. We was on him all night, man, but he stayed strong, of course, until he, had to go out the game. But, you really couldn't tell with him, man. He stood in there strong, completed passes when he needed to. He was a good ball player.
How was it being on the road, different conference game, playing against a team in a different conference, but looking up in the stands and seeing, all the orange, all the Tennessee fans that travel to come see you guys and support you guys.
Yeah, that's love, man. We love the fans, man. They give us the energy when we see them out there, especially on the road. You go to a hostile environment like Pitt. It's hard to win there, especially with a ranked opponent. They feel good about themselves, and they're a good team. But seeing the fans there, that's love. That gets us ready to play.
Was there a play of the game that really stood out for you, for your defense, that you looked at, you pointed at, and said, hey, that was the game. That was a play in the game that we felt like we made and it turned the game around?
I had to say 4th and 2. Toward the end of the game, when my boy Wes, made that sack. It was just good to see that, especially for my boy Wes, making a play in a big time situation like that. That's when I really realized, man, we out here having fun.
More guys are playing this year, it seems.
Yeah.
More than rotation. How important is that for you? How's important is it for the defense as a whole?
It's very important, especially when you have a long season, especially playing in the SEC. The season gets long, the games get tough. You need that person, beside you that you can trust, to go out for a couple plays and, he'll be out there holding his own, doing just as good. So, that's definitely good. That keep us fresh, keep us playing fast.
A big win over Ball State, another big win over Pittsburgh, and you got to go back to work, right? What is that Monday like after a win? You've had 2 of those wins so far, but kind of walk us through what the Mondays are like after a win.
Yeah, Mondays, I wouldn't say they're a chill day, but really it's more mental. We go back and watch the film for this past week. We get ready, kind of do a walkthrough for Akron, and kind of clean up the mistakes we made this past weekend as well. But really just, it's more mental. We get a workout in, but, really fixing mistakes from last game and, working to get better for this coming up game.
First game was at 7 p.m. Second game against Pittsburgh was early at 3:30. Yeah. Which one you like better, man? Getting up, going, and playing, or having that night game?
I have to say 3:30, man. It's the perfect time and perfect balance. I have to say, night games are cool, because you're playing under the lights, but I have to say 3:30. You get the best of both worlds, especially toward the end of the season. Start out with some daylight and end with the night, so you can't beat the 3:30.
What's the next level for Aaron Beasley? What does that look like for you? I mean, obviously you can feel yourself getting better, the game, being slower for you. But what's the next level for you?
Just continue to grow, man. Continue to build with my teammates, push my teammates so that they can push me, and just growing our program, man. That's the biggest thing for me at this point. Trying to win as many games as we can and see what happens.
All right, you got Akron this week. Akron's not Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh is not Ball State.
Yeah.
How do you stay locked in even though maybe the opponent, the quality of the opponent maybe drops off a little bit?
Yeah, it's all mindset. Treating every week the same week, no matter who the competition is. Them boys, they're going to come here ready to play. Coming to Neyland, they're going to come give us their best game. So, we got to stay mentally locked in and prepare, for Akron the same way we would prepare for Florida. You know what I'm saying?
I like it. Aaron Beasley was flying all over the field against Pittsburgh, looking for him to do the same thing at Akron, or home at Akron, and then Florida after that. Guys?
All right, so when we come back, what we'll talk about is parity is alive and well in college football. And Tennessee's got to pay attention to that. We'll talk about that coming up next on the Locker Room, connected by Iris Networks. But before we go, your chance to support the Big Orange and the initiative that does bring players like Aaron Beasley in here, and that is Spire Sports. You can be a member of the Volunteer Club. For as little as $19 a month, you can support the Vols by going to volunteerclub.com. Locker Room continues right after this. As far as Saturday night's game, there's a couple places you could go for this. You could have gone with Beasley, but boy, Cedric Tillman made a name for himself. Jason, I'm going to let you do this as a former wide receiver. Why was he so open all the time?
Well, I mean, he's open when he's not open because
there you go.
You have a quarterback that trusts him, and you have a guy at Tillman that's one of the best 50-50 ball catchers in the country. It doesn't matter if he's contested, nice frame, athletic ability, strong hands. You saw that on display against Pittsburgh.
Okay, so I want to go somewhere a little bit different right now. With Akron coming in, we're already doing what so many others are doing. That is looking ahead to Florida. And you look back this past weekend and you see major underdogs that pulled off big upsets over the weekend. Look no further than Appy State, 17-14 over Texas A&M. Notre Dame loses to Marshall. Why is college football so different and parity is alive and well, unlike we've seen in a long time?
Well, I think you're seeing parity amongst everything from top 4 down. Those upper echelon teams are still not much parity there, but it's getting better. Alabama's mortal, or a lot more mortal than they have been. Georgia certainly looks like a defensive juggernaut again. They lose 5 first-rounders, 8 overall on the defense.
Georgia back to number 1, Alabama number 2 now.
Yeah, and so, but yeah, there is a lot of parity in that 5 to 50 range in college football, more so than there ever has been, and that provides excitement. It provides more entertaining games, and honestly, every time slot, the noon games, the 3:30 games, the 7 o'clock games, the late night games out on the West Coast with BYU and Baylor, all those were entertaining to the point where if you're a college football fan, you found something kind of in every time slot that you were like kind of captivated by.
Yeah, I think it's more distractions for players. I think it's harder to coach players too.
Okay.
If you're a coach, it's hard to connect with those players. Players have more power now than ever, and so if you're not on top of your game as a coach, you're gonna lose the interest of your players. And then showing up on Saturday, look, Scott Frost, look at Jimbo Fisher. These supposed to be top-notch coaches, and their team's not playing like it.
So here's we all 3 married over our heads, okay? All 3 of us did. But I'm going to share, my wife and I were watching a number of games on Saturday. And she said to me, I thought it was a very astute point. She said, it looks to me like there are some players that are playing harder to get their NIL money. And there are those players who have already gotten it that aren't trying real hard. That was what she said, and I wonder. I want to present it to you guys.
So how do you know who's got what and who doesn't?
Well, Texas A&M Appy State is a perfect example.
Yeah, but
that's just one.
Yeah.
By the way, you're bashing me is going to be bashing my wife, so just be careful here because she knows where to find you.
No, yeah, you're right.
Okay.
But Appalachian State is only going to have so much from an NIL fund perspective because.
But how many of those guys are going to go to the portal and then try to get their money after the season?
That's a lot. There's going to be a lot of kids. Look at Jared Verse at Florida State. Played at Albany a year ago. Tennessee was in that. Florida State lands him. Had an unbelievable first week down there playing against LSU. And a year ago, he was playing at Albany. So, there's going to be a lot of those. I think had, Isaiah Nayor not blown his knee out at Texas, he would have been a real difference maker for the Longhorns. He was playing at Wyoming. So what it's going to do is it's going to make the bottom part of college football, to me, weaker, because if you do land a good player and you develop him, he's probably not going to be with you long term. You know what I'm saying? Like, I was watching Marshall Faulk. I was watching San Diego State last week. Does Marshall Faulk finish at San Diego State in modern day football?
No.
Okay then.
No, but I think that was her point. So I'll present it to you as a former player, because now there's almost like there's some cheese out there for you to go after.
I personally could not tell that. I saw A&M play last week,
and you weren't impressed.
They just didn't look good.
Yeah.
And so that's why I picked Appy State to beat Texas A&M, because Appy State played very well against North Carolina, and they're always well coached. They always play hard, and so I wasn't surprised one bit that they beat Texas A&M.
Do you think there's more parity in college football, or is the sample size just too small?
Well, like Austin said, the top teams, no. It's the haves and the have-not, and then those guys, they get all the good players, they have all the resources. I don't see much parity at the top, but it seems like there's more after 2 weeks of college football, 2022 season.
Just look at the SEC. Before the season, everybody said Alabama, Georgia, right?
Sure.
And then after that, who's going to be number 3?
A&M.
And after number 3, I don't think
Arkansas.
Point is, there was a lot of teams.
Sure.
Yeah.
And there still is. You look at it, a few weeks in, and there's 5-6 teams that could be that third team, but who knows how it all shakes out. Arkansas looks really good, but they got a murderer's row schedule, and right in the middle of the SEC, they got to go to BYU. Mm-hmm. So they could be a really good football team, go 8-4.
Is there, and you guys are going to get tired of me kind of going down this road just a little bit, but is there a way of trying to figure out the portal and NIL that schools are going to have to figure out what's working and what's not? Is it smarter to give the 5-star guys the big money up front, or is it better to give 3- and 4-star after they've proven themselves? Like Tennessee's kind of done for the most part. I've got about a minute left, and I got to get to break.
Well, I think ultimately, you'd love to go pluck some really solid players out of the portal because once they transfer, they can't transfer again. They can bellyache about the money that they're getting in NIL all they want to, but they can't go somewhere without either transferring down or transferring and setting out. So, I think, it's a mixture. You got to recruit high school kids to build, but for immediate or to fine-tune some position groups, you have to hit the portal hard.
You know what I think I figured? Hang on, here, I'm going to tell you what I figured out through this is it's still taboo. It's still taboo to talk about. I got to get to break, but it's kind of like nobody really wants to talk about NIL and
because college football is here
and portal.
Football season is here. That's why.
So in other words, that conversation is for the off season, not for during the season.
Exactly.
And so with that, we'll go to break on the Locker Room, connected by Iris Networks. We'll talk about that in the off season.
The Locker Room is brought to you by Pilot Company, Ted Russell Ford, Food City, and Lincoln Memorial University.
Well, we tell you every week, and a lot of people are going to HillaryFrostHomes.com and registering for your chance to win lunch with the Vols. You and 3 of your friends. The winner will be announced on December the 4th, and our thanks to our good friends at Spire Sports for working with us on that.
Any truth to the rumor that you're going to wear that jacket to that lunch?
It depends on if Tennessee hits the over 7.5 wins on the season. Okay, so Georgia the new number 1, Alabama number 2 after the weekend, Kentucky number 9, Arkansas at 10, Tennessee comes in at 15, Florida at 18, Texas A&M at 24.
Yeah, A&M should have fallen out, but again, these preseason polls are what they are, a bunch of hubbub until October.
It's week 2. Tennessee played Pitt, got the win, got Florida in 2 weeks, and the SEC schedule starts. We'll see here in a couple of weeks where Tennessee.
I like seeing Tennessee move up in the polls.
Oh, I love to see Tennessee ranked, period.
And all I'm saying is if Tennessee can get to the point where they can win the next 2 games and get to 4-0, then they got an off week before they go to LSU.
Week.
You get 2 weeks to celebrate being in the top 10.
I think that's the best thing going for Tennessee's schedule. You go back to 2016, they beat Florida, then they beat Georgia, and then they went to A&M, they played Alabama. They played those 4 games straight in a row, no break, no anything. This year you play Pitt, you got a 2-week build to Florida. If you win that game, you got a 2-week build to LSU. You do play LSU and Bama back-to-back, but then you got UT Martin. So there's not this 4-week murderers row that they've had in years past where you felt like, cannot get a breather, we need a bye week. They don't have that this year.
Right.
How many times are we going to see that jacket in the
I
next
don't
2
know.
weeks?
I don't know what kind of year it's going to be. If they beat Florida, they beat Akron, they beat Florida, I will crack open the orange jacket again. What will you guys wear?
Some orange, I guess. We'll have to find some, right?
I've-
AP got something right there.
That's as much as Austin pulls out there. We'll see you next week after Tennessee goes 3-0. At least they better. We'll see you then.